Hi, Alan Stratton from As Wood Turns. For this project, let's turn this bowl from green wood. I actually started it about a year and a half ago when a tree came down in my neighbor's yard. It is a good classic bowl, a good form. It has a nice weight, not too light, not too heavy. And it has a little lip out here that I like because it helps me hold it and not slip off. So let's get turning. I'm using a clear acrylic disc with concentric circles to help me visualize the main mass of the wood to choose a point for the live center. Then I'm drilling through the bark and outer sapwood for a solid live center. The wood is Bradford pear from a neighbor's tree that came down in a microburst. The wood is quite dense and very fresh. I have chopped off the corners with a chainsaw to make the initial turning a little easier and the wood a little bit lighter, but it is still very heavy. On the spindle side, I have a wood faceplate. After this time, I made a pin faceplate to be more secure for this side, but the wood faceplate will be sufficient for this time. I am using my favorite tool, my large bowl gouge. The first thing is to knock off more corners, mainly on the bottom side. Then work off the very bottom. There is a way to go before I get to the tenon area. Then cut a tenon before moving on to round off the final corners. As fresh green wood, the wood cuts easily. However, I will need to clean shavings from my rest to prevent rust. I only want to get the wood rounded off, but I cannot refine the shape until it is flipped over into a firm chuck mount. Now that the wood is securely mounted into my chuck, I can finalize the exterior shape. For the most part, this is shear cutting to remove very little wood, but also with very little tear out. This refines the shape, but I have to remember, the wood will still warp while drying. There is no sense in refining the surface to final perfection. I also clean off the top to remove any remaining balance issues. Next, I can start hollowing with my bowl gouge. With green wood, I like to keep the live center in place for as long as possible to stabilize the mount. This allows me to take heavier cuts and not worry about the bowl jumping out of the chuck. I also like to take hogging cuts from the center outward. These cuts remove a lot of wood in a hurry. However, the risk is catching the wing of the gouge on the bowl wall towards the end of the cut. So I alternate with some cuts from the outer diameter to inner diameter to give me room for more hogging cuts. After a lot of wood is gone, I can trim out the center pedestal. It has served its purpose. Most of the heavy wood removal is complete. No more hogging cuts. I finish out with more cuts from outer to inner and check for consistent wall thickness. I am leaving the walls thick to accommodate warping. It is always a risk whether I have left enough to be able to cut out the warp. We'll see in a few months. I finish out with a heavy bowl scraper for the bottom middle. Other gouge purists would switch to a gouge with a steeper grind, but I'm very comfortable with the heavy scraper. To slow the drying to prevent cracking, I am using a PVA-based sealer product from Craft Supplies. It goes on like thick glue. After the PVA dries, I also will put the bowl in a brown paper sack for a month or so during the initial drying time. I weigh and record the weight periodically. When the weight stops changing, it is dry. This bowl started out at 2,328 grams. Almost a year and a half later, it weighs 1,612 grams, a loss of 716 grams or 31%. That's about right. The outer diameter ranges from 10 3/4 inches to about 10 1/2, 10 1/4. Not too bad. There's also a vertical bump at the end grain, also typical. Since just about every dimension and every curve has changed due to warping, the only thing I can rely on is the original live center point. Maybe it has also moved, but I have to start somewhere. For this bowl, I selected a large rounded faceplate that mounts to my chuck. The live center holds the bowl against this faceplate, which fits pretty good. I focus on recutting the mounting tenon and rounding off some of the center bottom, which will be difficult to get at once I remount the wood. Shear cutting with my bowl gouge takes off the least amount of wood and yields a great surface. With the wood again mounted on the tenon to a chuck and with the live center adding more security, I can proceed. First, I want to define the lip. I had left extra wood at the lip, but I am now cutting most of that away to get rid of the warp. We will see if I can give it that flare at the lip. Then back to shear cutting the exterior to refine the curve and see if I still have a bit of a flare out at the lip. This pear figure is not dramatic, but it is more subtle and mellow. Finally, pull back the live center and recut the interior. No hogging cuts this time. That wood is gone already. My first cuts at an area remove the warp. Then I work on wall thickness. This bowl is deep. As I get the upper walls close to final thickness, they start to vibrate and I get a chatter. More speed helps, but I will soon stop and move down more to the bottom. Periodically, I check the wall thickness. This bowl is almost too big for this gauge from Mark Jakowski. Finally, switch to my heavy bowl scraper to thin out the bottom and blend the curve to the wall. It passes my finger test and is ready for sanding. Before finishing the foot, I check the bottom thickness. I have quite a bit of wood I can remove to reduce the bottom. When doing the interior, I had decided to flatten the exterior curve rather than to go deeper. A design choice. I mount the bowl to coal jaws and mark where I think the bottom should be, then gently and carefully cut down the bottom. The coal jaws limit my speed, which makes it go even more slowly. Then I switch to my bowl scraper for a finish cut. After a little more sanding, my pear bowl is ready for walnut oil. This will give me a matte finish. Later I can buff it if I decide to make it more shiny. There you have it. I am happy with this bowl from Pear. Turning green wood is a pleasure. I would have hated to remove this much wood if it were already dry. Plus, who would guarantee that the solid wood would not have developed cracks while drying? Although about a year and a half has elapsed from initial turning to final, drying the solid wood would have taken 6 or 7 years to dry at this thickness. Turning a bowl like this one is one thing that initially attracted me to wood turning. Please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe on my website, and tell your friends. I appreciate your comments and questions. Every week I make a new wood turning video and add it to my website. As usual, I appeal for you to wear your full face shield for safety anytime the lathe is running. Count your blessings instead of your problems, and I will see you next week with another wood turning video.